President-elect Ramon Magsaysay in 1953 held so much promise. With his country only 7 years out of the war, Filipinos felt that he was the leader who truly represented the masses and would direct the country's growth. He was young, his energy was boundless, and his commitment to serve the people was unquestionable.
I believe that the President should set the example of a big heart, an honest mind, sound instincts, the virtue of healthy impatience, and an abiding love for the common man.
For him to heal Cambodians of the trauma caused by the atrocities of civil war and genocide, he needed to redefine this trauma.
in addressing the trauma and mental health problems of Cambodians. He will be joined later by a panel of experts as they share their take on Dr. Chhim's presentation. After the panel discussion, we will be opening the floor to questions from our audience. For your questions, you may use the various available platforms, Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. To formally open our event, please all welcome to your grid the President of the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation, Ms. Susan D. Afan.
Thank you, Marie, and hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ramon Magsaysay Transformative Leadership Institute's lecture series. Our public lectures are one of the very exciting highlights of the Ramon Magsaysay Awards Festival season. Through these lectures, our global audience is given a one-of-a-kind opportunity to dialogue with our Ramon Magsaysay laureates. It is also a chance for us to learn about their unique leadership journeys and the extraordinary impact in the communities they've served. This afternoon's lecture is really a special one because it affects all of us. It's about mental health. We have the pleasure and privilege to listen and engage with one of the region's leading mental health advocates, 2022 Ramon Magsaysay Awardee from Cambodia, Dr. SOTHEARA CHHIM. In the next 2 hours, we will learn about the holistic approach used by Dr. CHHIM and his organization called the Transcultural Psychosocial Organization Cambodia, or we will address them as TPO, because they have been addressing the mental health issues in their country at the very grassroots level. Joining us this afternoon are the members of the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation's Board of Trustees, including Dr. Shelito Habito, who will also serve as our lead panelist. We at the foundation are really very, very blessed to have Shell on our board. So let's begin. Mental health is one of the most pressing issues we face today. But we at the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation have chosen mental health not just to talk about it as an issue, but it's also something that we need to address and highlight for discussions not just for today, but in the years to come. More than 50 years ago, in 1966, the foundation discovered a quiet doctor from Thailand whose work has been instrumental in shaping the development of his country's mental health services. The institutions and methods of care for the mentally afflicted and the preventive education established under his vision and guidance helped his people make the transition towards modernization with minimal human cost. His name was Phon Sang Sing Ke Yo. He received the Ramon Magsaysay Award in 1966. Several mental health advocates have since received Asia's premier prize and highest honor. Among the many are Ananda Galapati from Sri Lanka, Kim Jong-ki from South Korea, and last year, Stephen Munsey for his work in Southeast Asia. This year, on our 64th year, we again found greatness of spirit in another mental health champion, Dr. SOTHEARA CHHIM, who leads Cambodia's largest organization that provides comprehensive mental health care services and support to Cambodians, the Transcultural Psychosocial Organization, or TPO. Dr. CHHIM's journey in healing his countrymen's mental health issues has not been very easy because it takes a lot of compassion, empathy, dedication, and a real genuine desire to help others and make a difference. Ladies and gentlemen, this afternoon, We will all learn about Dr. Chhim and TPO Cambodia, who continuously are working together towards the collective mental health healing of Cambodians. Friends, let us all welcome 2022 Ramon Magsaysay Awardee, Dr. SOTHEARA CHHIM. Dr. Chhim, good afternoon from Manila. How are you?
Good afternoon from Cambodia. Thank you so much. And it's a great opportunity to be here to talk to everyone about my experience and the work I have done. Thank you.
Well, we are very, very excited to hear how you've indigenized actually, all the learnings that you've had from the many universities, schools, and mentors that you've had, and bring it to Cambodia and make it something very special for your people. So let's get our program started. To minimize technological glitches, we have requested Dr. Chhim to pre-record his public lecture. After the video, he will rejoin us for the live panel discussion and the questions and answers. We now request everybody to please turn off their cameras and microphones as we view the lecture.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chhim SOTHEARA. I am an Executive Director of the Transcultural Psychosocial Organization, Cambodia. Today, I'm pleased to share with you about the mental health developments, about the challenge and the experience of TPO in doing mental health work in Cambodia. To start my presentations, I want to show you a prophecy. A prophecy is something that everyone in Cambodia heard before the fall of the Khmer Rouge. And at that time, I was a child. I also heard this. It said darkness will settle on the people of Cambodia. There will be houses, but no people in, roads, but no traveler upon. The land will be ruled by barbarians with no religions. The blood will be so high as to touch the belly of the elephants. Only the deaf and the mute will survive. At the time I heard this, but I do not know what was that about. So until 17 April 1975, the Khmer Rouge communists took over the country and what they say, they liberate the country. And then they start to evacuate people out of the cities to live in the rural area. So you can see there are houses, but no people in, because the Khmer Rouge empty the cities. There are road, but no traveler. You can see there was road in the city, there was road. In every city there was road, but no one travel on the road, because they all was evacuated out of the city to live in the rural area. And everyone was forced to work hard, working in the forced labor like this. So I remember when I see this boy photo, it's remember of me working under the Khmer Rouge during that time. And then as a result, so many Cambodians killed, almost 2 million Cambodians killed because of starvations, execution, tortures, illness, etc., etc. And after the Khmer Rouge, everyone confused, everyone gets sick, everyone demoralized, everyone depressed. So we all was allowed to return back to their home because the Khmer Rouge ran away. So we come back home with all this. And now I want to present you a Cambodian trauma syndrome called Batsbat. This is because many foreigners think that Cambodian people who suffer a lot of traumatic experience under the Khmer Rouge, they must have high rates of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But in fact, it's not true because the rate of PTSD in Cambodia is very low, 1 or 2% or something. And this is maybe why. Why is that? Because I think maybe Cambodian culture play a role in this, as the culture shapes and give the meanings to the whole human experience, including traumatic event. And maybe PTSD, this is the one that developed in Western country, but this one cannot capture the problem in non-Western country like Cambodia. So our culture is different. Our way of responding to trauma, to mental health problem, our way of making sense of the problem are different. So that's why could be the difference. Maybe a conspiracy of silence, because the therapist and the survivor experience the same trauma, so they maybe unconsciously don't talk about. So when they don't talk about, they may not know the problems. Or maybe survivor use culture and tradition to cope as a way to cope. So this reason is found by Kinsey, who worked with Cambodian refugees in the US a lot. Or maybe the Buddhist teaching of love, kindness, compassion, karma, help Cambodian find the meaning of trauma and help them to cope with the problem accordingly. So I look at Baksbat from etymological perspective. It's come from, it's compared to a Japanese concept called Kyodatsu. So, you know, in the World War II, after the collapse of Japanese emperor declared the defeats, they found that many Japanese society have a sense of kyodatsu, an exhaustion and despair that many Japanese people experienced at that time. So some people say it's not the war that destroyed Japan, but it's kyodatsu that could destroy Japan. From ethno-medical perspective, I translate it as a broken courage. And traditional healer think that this is a kind of paiklat. In Khmer term, it's like translated as fear or double fear. So it's more than fear. It's double fear. Or other authors say this is called luh pralung, or the soul get out of the body. Kung Bon Chuen, also a renowned Khmer author, he categorized 42 types of Khmer illness, and Baksbat is one of them. And because of Baksbat, Cambodians often feel exhausted, passive, reluctant to fight or to resist. That's why I explain why Cambodians, you know, were so easy. The Khmer rules come and tell people to evacuate the city. Just about 1 or 24 hours, the whole Phnom Penh city was empty. So there was no resistance. And there was some symptoms of Baksbat I present here. Majority of respondents I talked to, I interviewed, they say Baksbat is paiklat, is kind of fear, or reactions to Rieng Chal. It ceases to do anything. So when they have Baksbat, they cease to do anything. Or Khlai being fearful or feeling dread or wishing never to experience the event again. So when they have Baksbat, they never want to do something again, to see something again. And some people say Baksbat is a loss of courage and they are not want to confront others. Damdangko, this is a concept that happened in Khmer Rouge time, because everyone need to hide their identity. They need to stay mute, pretend not to hear, to know, to see anything. So when we say Damdangko in Khmer Rouge, we understand that, and we must stop saying, stop talking, stop expressing. Kopjabal is kind of idea bury. So when people are unable to having Baksbat, they are unable to speak about something. So this experience relate to what they call luh pralung, or the soul run out of the body. Or Chom Nyom, it's become submissive. Kamsa, cowards. Yeah. So how can we overcome Basbat? What can Japanese treat Kyodasu? Like I said earlier, the foreigners say it's not the war that killed Japan, but it Kyodasu that people experience after the war could kill Japanese economy. But Japan did very well. They become the strongest power in economy. How can they do that? So in terms of traditional perspective, they do ceremony to divert danger. So a ceremony to help people, they never see a danger again in the future, that help them deal with Basbat. Calling back the soul, this is a kind of traditional things that I interviews and look at literatures. And because Basbat is believed that the soul get out of the body, so they have a ceremony to call back the soul. But one important thing is prescription of courage, increase democratic space, because people don't want to talk, don't want to hear, don't want to see. How can they challenge? So I think we need to create a democratic space, a space where people can talk freely without threat, intimidations. But this is not easy. And mental health care, approach to mental health care can be helpful to help Cambodians cope with this. So this is some of the activity that TPO do to help to cope with, deal with Basbat. So this is me testify in the court again, the butcher, Mr. Dutt, and TPO counselor here was sitting in the courtroom to support Cambodian victims to testify, to give the courage for them to testify against the Khmer Rouge leader. And this is testimony therapy. It's helped people to tell their trauma story. First, the trauma story is recorded, written into the book, and then read aloud in the public in front of the Buddhist monk or the imam for Muslim people. Yeah, and then the blessing is given after the testimony. Doing so help people, feel relief and feel that they are safe, psychological relief, safety in the future. This is a film-based dialogue to help people understand and discuss about Khmer Rouge. And we have a victim-perpetrator dialogue. We have a session that victim and perpetrator meet and challenge each other. So this is the session where they reconcile after they understand each other. So this is, I want to say about TPO approach. So you can see the Khmer Rouge affect Cambodian at 3 levels: individual, family, and community. So our intervention must be addressed at different levels. So this is the level of intervention at community, at family, at individual. And this is the type of intervention. So at community level, we train key resource people, doing psychoeducation. At family, we do self-help group. Individual counseling, we do counseling and psychiatric treatment. But before the start of activity, we do social context assessment, because we are the one from outside. We do not understand what happened in a community. So we need to go to community to assess community about the resource, about problem, how coping mechanisms are. And then we invite resource people to the training program. So this is the training program. So our training offer to community leaders, monks, nuns, traditional healers, and we also offer training to NGO staff and doctor. Here is the activity of our training to community resource people. And after the training, they become our partner who help us working in the community. This is the training that we offer to NGO partner, to government officer, and to health staff. And after the training, like I said, these people become our partner in the community. So then to make people aware, understand of mental health problem, we do psychoeducation. So because people cannot read and write in the community, so we make poster for the people. The people often say, well, don't help us. If you want to help us, give us money, give us food. We will be okay because we are not crazy. And we say, oh, this photo is, mental health is not crazy. So sometimes, people experience different things. For example, poverty, war, disaster, social problems, somebody die, domestic violence. When people experience this, they become anxious, worry, cannot sleep, sad, depressed, or abuse alcohol. So when we say this, they said, wow, everyone have this problem. How can you help me? So we use poster to help raise awareness. So this is other poster. Yeah. And this is awareness raising activity. This is group for children. And then after psychoeducation, we organize a health group. So the group will help us to understand, to help the victim survivor of domestic violence to express their feeling, their emotion. Here is the group for alcoholic. And then we have counseling at individual level. This is the counseling session. We do it at our office or at the community. And if people have severe problem, we refer to psychiatrists so they can come to our clinic. Or we help the health center, the government health center to set up mental health clinic, so that they can treat the people in the community. So this is our community mental health approach. The challenge, there are so many challenges we face. Firstly, the lack of leadership in mental health. So because of the lack of coordination in different players, everyone work on their own. So that makes it difficult to have a better impact on community. The lack of human and financial resource, because mental health is not the priority among donors and among the government. So that makes our work difficult. The lack of integration of mental health into the public health, and the lack of community mental health service in rural area. So mentally ill patients often put up or lock up or chained or put in the cage. Extreme poverty also make people feel difficulty. They start to migrate or they abuse. The stigma, the problems because people does not seek help because of the stigma related to mental health. In conclusions, the need of psychological and mental health care in rural Cambodia are huge. And I think, in our opinion, mental health and psychosocial intervention need to be holistic, as we cannot work alone as a mental health worker. We have to work with other partners. We have to work with organizations that provide food, provide income generation to help people with mental health problems improve further. And mental health need to be integrated into the local context. We see that when address mental health and psychosocial issues, it leads to improvement their livelihood, improve economic opportunity, increase access to other basic service. Because poor mental health, people are not able to get job. Poor mental health, people may face injustice or human rights abuse. So when addressing mental health, increase their access to all the service they need. And I think the government and donor should invest more in mental health. Thank you so much for your attention. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chhim, for that very, very inspiring talk. I guess it's just that sometimes mental health the battle that we're facing it's invisible. When you talk about courage, broken courage, when you talk about fear and trauma, it can be invisible. And so, that's very hard to do. But we thank you so much for that very informative video and for sharing your story with us. So let's go to today's moderator. Today's moderator, actually, as I've said earlier, is Dr. Shelito Habito, a member of the RMAF Board of Trustees with a doctorate in economics from Harvard University. He is currently an economics professor at the Ateneo de Manila University and a senior fellow at Ateneo Center for Economic Research and Development. He writes a weekly op-ed column called No Free Lunch in the Philippine Daily Inquirer, and he has a following. He was the Philippines' chief economist also for most of the 1990s when he served in the cabinet of President Fidel V. Ramos as Secretary of Socioeconomic Planning. So now may I please turn over the program to our session moderator and panelist, Dr. Shelito Habito. Shel?
Thank you. Thank you so much for that very kind introduction. For our panel discussion this afternoon, we expect a very thoughtful discussion as we have invited two high-caliber individuals who are in leagues of their own when it comes to their respective fields. Let me first introduce the 2018 Ramon Magsaysay Awardee from India, Dr. Bharat Batwani. Dr. Batwani is the founder and trustee of the Shraddha Rehabilitation Foundation, a fully charitable registered NGO dedicated to the rescue, treatment, rehabilitation, and reunification of the families of the wandering mentally ill, destitute on the streets of India. Dr. Batwani received the Ramon Magsaysay Award for, in quotes, his tremendous courage and healing compassion in embracing India's mentally afflicted destitute, and his steadfast and magnanimous dedication to the work of restoring and affirming the human dignity of even the most ostracized in our midst, unquote. Also joining Dr. Batwani is Dr. Cornelio Banaag Jr. from the Philippine Mental Health Association. Dr. Banaag is the current president of the Philippine Mental Health Association. He was a member of an international faculty under the International Organization for Migration that engaged in teaching and mentoring the first 30 psychiatrists in Cambodia after the Khmer Rouge genocide in the country happened. And one of his mentees happened to be Dr. SOTHEARA CHHIM. He was named Professor Emeritus when he retired from the UP College of Medicine in 2015. And he's often called the father of child and adolescent psychiatry in the Philippines. So let me start with the latter. I will give the floor first to Dr. Banaag. And so, Dr. Banaag, the floor is yours for your reaction. You may now unmute yourself, Dr. Banaag.
Nino, can you unmute me?
There you go. We can hear you, Dr.
Can you
Banaag.
hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, I'm glad. First,
We lost you again, Dr. Banaag. Dr. Banaag, we seem to have lost you again. Can you try and unmute again?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, now we can again. Okay. Or did you lose him altogether?
Maybe we can start with
Yes.
Dr. Batwani.
Yes, I think we may have lost Dr. Banaag. I hope he can reconnect promptly. But if Dr. Batwani doesn't mind, we will have to go to you ahead.
Yeah,
So can
I'm
we give the
comfortable.
floor to you now, Dr. Batwani? 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Let me know when the 5 minutes are over. Yeah, it was a great talk from Dr. Chhim. I think the few things which I would like to talk to all the people who are participating and who are hearing is that this is a condition wherein the perpetrator of the crime, the survivor of the crime, and the therapist are literally in the same cultural milieu, often known to each other. So this is a condition wherein there are mass psychiatric problems, as he said. In such conditions, one of the person or a few of the people have to rise above their own personal holocaust and attempt to give solace to the remaining population, which is what Dr. Chhim has done in a very, very, very big way. To that much of an extent, the Cambodian tragedy is a mirror image of what happened to India when India was going through its freedom struggle and Mahatma Gandhi and all the others came up. So you have a perpetrator, you have a survivor, and you have a therapist, all from the same cultural milieu. One of the Ramon Magsaysay Awardees, who's my mentor and Baba Amte, he has written something which is just wonderful, which I remembered now. He says that I have always been drawn to this fellowship of pain. I think God created pain because without it, there would be no tenderness. It is very easy for a man to love God. It is very difficult for him to follow the commandment, love thy neighbor. The herd doesn't wait for the wounded deer. Therefore, someone else must help. This is Dr. Chhim, who has risen from the ranks and has decided to help his own people out. This is a brilliant effort from his side. The second takeaway, which I felt, was that each one of us has to realize that if we want to bring about change in any cultural milieu, we have to become a part of that cultural milieu, and we have to understand that change will happen only within that cultural perspective. Like you take, for example, his testimony therapy. I mean, testimony therapy in the US or in Western countries would be invalid. But here you have someone who's speaking out whatever horrors he has gone through, speaking out in front of a religious head, and that is, again, repeated not just to him, but to all the others, and it is considered as testimony. That is a brilliant effort, indigenized effort, as Suzanne said earlier. It is an indigenized effort of Dr. Chhim and all his fellow colleagues to rise up to a situation and bring an intervention policy which is rooted in the culture, This helps a lot in healing. This is often true even with medicines. I mean, the medicines which work in Cambodia may not work in the US and vice versa. The second thing, which is again a very important point from his talk, is that you have to enter that cultural milieu. You cannot be an outsider. The survivor cannot be an insider. Finally, it is all of us together, empathizing with one another, having suffered common pains, and attempting to come out of it at a conjoint togetherness. I'm definite that while Dr. Chhim has rendered a lot of service to the mentally afflicted in Cambodia, he himself must have been able to overcome his grief, his personal loss at having gone through this whole tragedy. Personally, at a young age, at childhood, if I remember, he was separated from his family for 3.5 years. After having suffered all that, to come out of it is not just giving, it is also receiving. So the receiver and the giver at some point of time become together. And finally, it is a common process of the entire community rising. Collective pain changes and becomes collective healing. Again, now he said something about lack of coordination of different players. In this, the worker, I mean, those who are participants and who intend to work for community psychiatry have to give up their own ego and realize that you're just a cog in the wheel. At the end of the day, it is not Dr. Chhim alone. It is the entire staff, entire people of transcultural psychosocial organization which has helped out, which has brought about all this change within a country. So it's a collective effort. You are just another cog in the wheel, as important or as unimportant as the next person. Now comes the last point, wherein he said that mental health is not a priority amongst government or donor agencies. As a psychiatrist, I would like to say that why is it not a priority? It is not a priority because people are stigmatized by mental illness. They run away with the very aspect of mental illness. They run away from the very concept of mental illness. They run away from the very presence of mental illness. So in the process, you don't want to acknowledge that people in Cambodia are suffering. You don't want to acknowledge that people in India are wandering mentally ill on the roads. You don't want to acknowledge that thing within yourself or within anybody else of humanity. It is that stigma which is preventing you from going the distance and helping out your fellow brethren. So unless something is done to root out that stigma at a global level, or I would more say at an Asian level, because in Asia, perhaps it is very dominant. Unless something is done on that particular issue, the amount of donations, the amount of government involvement will always be a little less. Ultimately, all of us have to realize that all of us, be it Dr. Chhim, be it myself, be it the Ramon Magsaysay Award trustees, founders, everybody, all of us sail in the same boat. Some are less mentally disturbed and some are more mentally disturbed. Each one of us is searching for his own piece of sunshine, and some of us occasionally succumb to the darkness. So this is a process. We are sailing in the same boat, whether we have won the Ramon Magsaysay Award or not, or whether we have won any other award or not, is not the point. The point is that we are in the same boat. We are incomplete. We are fragile. We are capable of breaking. It's possible that somebody may commit suicide at the ultimate end of the given up complex. But all of us have to continue to strive for this inner peace, inner reconciliation within our communities and within Asia at large and within the world at large. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Vatwani. Well, it seems to me that we are still having problems getting Dr. Banaag back in. He's expected to rejoin us shortly. For now, I guess what we can do is to, well, let me give a few thoughts of my own. Indeed, I affirm Dr. Vatwani's observations and feelings coming out of the presentation of Dr. Chhim. I think, as he very well presented, it seems that the very unique phenomenon that happened in Cambodia and with Cambodians was a particular challenge, I guess, for somebody who, of course, learned about psychiatry, perhaps mostly in the applications outside of the country. And so it was really very creative and very, shall we say, ingenious of Dr. Chhim to be able to look at, psychiatry in a very, very specific context of the circumstances of his own people. And indeed, I reaffirm also that observation that it seems that mental health, the importance of mental health seems to be widely unappreciated or underappreciated. And so that indeed even funding by donor agencies and the kind of attention that the general public would give is actually something that is wanting. And in a situation like Cambodia, especially after the national trauma that the people of Cambodia went through, really it's something that the rest of the world ought to be realizing, that how important and how extremely vital mental health is in the total well-being of a person. And so hopefully through this recognition of the Ramon Magsaysay Award, not only of Dr. Chhim, but of course Dr. Vatwani and others, who have been recognized previously by the foundation, again, for similar work in mental health. The world gets to get into that understanding and appreciation of the need to really pay attention. And I like the way that Dr. Batwani said it, that in a way, all of us, every person have their own quirks, like mental quirks, right? Even in our own friends and our families, I think sometimes we like to make jokes about how people are crazy, or you're off your rocker, some screws are loose and all that. But you know, in effect, there's a whole spectrum, and it became particularly intense or acute among the Cambodians after this very particular national tragedy that befell the Cambodian nation. So indeed, everybody has a stake in it, because all of us have our own mental difficulties one time or another. And so I really applaud the work of Dr. Chhim, and you know, especially in the way that he was able to take specific application of the general knowledge on the field of psychiatry in his own field. But you know, I wanted to say that it takes a victim to understand other victims, and like Dr. Batwani said, you know, that is perhaps what equipped Dr. Chhim so eminently to be able to deal with this problem, using the kind of knowledge provided by his own disciplinary profession, the field of medicine and the psychiatric medicine in particular, to be able to actually help. And you know, what really most impresses me about Dr. Chhim's work is that after having gone through that experience himself, I believe the temptation that anybody would have is to just retreat and withdraw,
Yes, yes.
and in a sense make up for one's own misfortune by just, okay, I just relax, I just enjoy the benefits of having gone over that. But no, he instead chose to spend his very time and effort to actually help his fellow victims. And this is, by the way, what we in the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation define as greatness of spirit. And that is, in fact, the key word in giving this award. Well, I see Dr. Banaag fully with us now. I hope his audio and video, well, his video looks good. I hope the audio also cooperates. I would love to hear from Dr. Banaag now. Dr. Banaag, are you ready with your own comments and reactions? As soon as you can, kindly unmute yourself. We're still having problems unmuting. We still don't hear you, Dr. Banaag. There's still a problem with your audio. We cannot hear you. There you go.
Yeah, correct.
There you go. Oops. You seem to be... All right. Oops. It muted again. From what we can see, at least. Can you try clicking it again? We're seeing the red mute icon. If you can just click that microphone icon on the left. Can you try speaking now? We don't see the red icon now, so, but no, it's not working. It's too bad. Sorry, we can't seem to be.
There you go.
Are we hearing? Can our admin do anything from his end or her end?
I think we're trying, Shell.
I know, yeah. Well, perhaps at this point, we can ask Dr. Chhim first, what might be some of his reactions to what Dr. Vatwani said, especially.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my experience and the work I have done in the past. And thank you, Dr. Vatwani and Professor, for your input, your feedback into this. And I think it is difficult when, well, at one point you can say victims, survivor, perpetrators, therapists come from the same culture. It may be easier, but at the point it's very difficult. It's very challenging for a lot of reasons. While we are working with the clients, we are listening to the problem of the clients. It's continuing re-traumatize ourselves all the times. And during this work, I and our colleague often have, nightmare about the patient problems, about or trigger our own past. So that's not easy. That one point. Another point is that, the Khmer Rouge kill a series of experts. So all the intellectuals, people in Cambodia, when they see educated people, working class people, they kill all these people. So after the Khmer Rouge, a generation come without skill, experience. So we are new, we learn ourselves, and we address the problem of our people, and that's not easy. I want to how can I say, emphasize also that if we work on mental health, we should not work only for making diagnosis and treatment prescription as a medical model. Because the invisible wounds, the collective trauma, the long repetitive collective trauma like the Khmer Rouge, the mental health diagnosis cannot capture us. But we can see from the attitude, from the behavior, from the way people address at each other's violence and other things that always relate to mental health issues. So if we focus on diagnosis and treatment from the medical perspective of mental health, I think we only can cover from one part. But to have a collective healing, we need to work on a non-medical issue of mental health, like justice, like truth, like community developments, like livelihood support and democratic space and all this. So I think, and that we can have a collective healing both from the medical and non-medical perspective of mental health. Yeah.
I believe that's very true, Dr. Chhim. I mean, in most problems of humanity, in fact, one has to really take a much more holistic view of the approaches to actually addressing those problems. And like you're saying, it's much more than it's much more than medicine or psychiatry that comes into play. It's really, again, elements of justice and society's own attitudes, and of course how the government deals with the situation, and so many other things at play. Well, at this point, I'd like to ask Dr. Vatwani if there are any further questions or comments that you might like to raise with Dr. Chhim.
Yeah, a couple of the points which I feel the participants should understand is that a lot of people do go through this trauma, whether the impact of the Cambodian thing or XYZ. the energy of that entire person is focused on attempting to come out of that trauma and develop his own life. Because of the stigma attached with mental illness, the person never looks back at the person who was with him once upon a time. That is a real tragedy. While actually everyone, I mean, whether in this entire tragedy which happened in Cambodia, everyone is a mirror image of what we went through. Now, when you look at it that way, then more and more people should have actually joined Dr. Chhim in supporting the movement and doing this. But if you look at it from a actual statistical point of view, or if you look at it from a very global, not many do that. Not many do that. I looked up Dr. Chhim's education. He was educated in Norway and Australia. He could have very easily remained in Norway and Australia, but he did not. That is the greatness of the person. He chose to come back and serve his country. That is the takeaway point for a huge, vast population which is hearing this particular talk, that unless you decide to come back and give something to the community, things don't particularly work out. And your own happiness, your own internal happiness, or your own internal healing, believe me, still remains incomplete. I would rate, despite all his, despite his he commented that he was going through nightmares and all that. Despite that, I would say that Dr. Chhim is right now one of the most healed persons out of that entire trauma.
Thank you.
Helped others. So that makes a lot of difference. The participants have to understand. And one more thing which the participants have to understand is that this whole process is a very slow process. He has encapsulated within 20 minutes what he did in his entire lifetime.
Generation.
Lifetime is going on for innumerable years, right from the time when he was 7 years old. And he actually underwent that trauma. So from 7 years old till today, that entire thing was encapsulated. Unless you stay plugged on and unless you stay rooted to the cause, things don't really move. In today's day of WhatsApp and in today's day of social media, waiting for those likes and waiting for those thumbs up and functioning only on that really is not going to lead you the distance. If you want to go the distance the way he has gone the distance, then you need to be rooted, you need to be committed, and you look at it from a long drawn perspective. All these social issues are what we call long hauls, which is what he, I think, specializes in. I mean, he's a brilliant inspiration of a person who has suffered from childhood, taken away. His mother told him to get educated in psychiatry. He did that. He came back. He didn't yield to the temptation of remaining in Norway or remaining in Australia. He came back and he served his country. Brilliant, brilliant. Kudos, kudos.
Well, I believe that's spoken from experience itself, from Dr. Batwani's own perspective. I know that he has also been sustaining his own work on this, and truly, I guess it's good that like-minded people and people like yourselves with similar causes can actually draw strength from one another.
Yes, yes. I mean, this is amazing. This is amazing.
Yeah. And Shell, if I can just add as well, because unfortunately, Dr. Banaag is still having some technical difficulties. He did mention to us, I know a couple of days ago, when he was saying that COVID, unfortunately, has exacerbated mental health all over the world. In some ways, it has exacerbated it, but at the same time, I think that people in general are taking mental health now a little bit more seriously, because unlike before, people would only think about their heart health, their eyes, their stomachs, but they kind of forget that mental health is just as important as every other part of your body. But the problem that we're having right now is that the supply and demand. We don't have as many people that want to get into mental health wellness because it's a difficult job.
Yes,
You kind of take on the problems of other people, number one. Number two, what is the support system of these people that constantly just hear other people's problems plus their own? And number three is because they don't get paid as well as if you went and became an IT professional or, if you're into finance and Bitcoin, maybe you would be, because it's sexier, it sounds sexier, maybe you get paid more. But when you're in the mental health or psychology or counseling, you don't get paid as much. So what do you think can we do to encourage young people to really invest in possibly getting involved in this kind of a career? What would you say to young people listening to us? Dr. Chhim.
Dr. Chhim, what do you think?
Well, from the beginning, I never want to be a psychiatrist or doctor. So because of the stigma, long-lasting stigma. But I think awareness raising to the people, to the public, and making a role model of our senior people. And I guess that if we can have participation from our national public figure coming forward to say that mental health is important. And I think when the public figures like the model, the movie star or politician can talk about this, I think people can follow. And I'm optimistic because newer generation in Cambodia, a lot of them that I work with, they are the one who understand mental health problem better than their parents. So they often bring their parents to seek mental health support. So I'm sure in the future, if there are more, proactive work from our politicians, our leaders to say this, I'm sure there will be more people who follow. Like the Norwegian Prime Minister some time ago when he depressed, I forgot his name, from Christian Democrat Party, something like that. He said that he want to tell the people that he is depressed and he want to take sick leave. But his cabinet refused because they think that he will lose the election if he say that. But he still insists that he will do it. So when he did it, a lot of people support because they believe that this is something that should not be, stigmatized, should not be forget about it or hidden. So I think this is a good model. So a lot of role model that we can play to the newer generation. It may encourage them to come and to study more, on psychiatry or psychology, social work in general.
Yes, indeed.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Dr. Banaag. In fact, we were wondering, even if without video,
Can I just,
yes, we can hear you now.
Yes, thank you. I'm very sorry. I was using this just earlier this morning. Somebody sabotaged me. But I'm hearing all these very interesting discussions. What do we do with the young people now? I think a lot of young people are very aware of the mental health problem. If this pandemic did anything good, it is to put mental health on center stage. I think everybody is now aware of the importance of mental health. Now, like I said in some other occasions, the problem now is a problem of supply and demand. The supply is increasing geometrically, and our ability to respond to do the supply of services is very slow. And so we are holding hands with different professionals. We've trained, when I say we in child psychiatry, we have an association, and also the Philippine Mental Health Association. We're training other partners in mental health, like pediatricians. They are the first aids, every child goes first to a pediatrician. We have trained them on early recognition and some early intervention within their capacities. We have talked to schools, teachers, and counselors, and we've been doing a lot of work with families now. So we need to supply more. Now, Susan had asked, what do we tell the young people, you know? How can we draw them in? Well, in the medical schools, you have to be a doctor to be a psychiatrist. In the medical school where I happen to be lecturing, I always lecture about the need for more professionals into the mental health. Mental health and psychiatry had gained respectability. It's no longer seen as crazy people, you know. I think this pandemic helped us in that regard. And so more and more people are getting interested. And I expect that there will be a troop of young people marching to the call for mental health services. In fact, many young people in the lay group, students, are forming group support to help push back the darkness of mental health problems. We have an organization called Youth for Mental Health. Youth for Mental Health, and they're helping us. They're partnering with us. So we're making all efforts to draw in more people, and we are now working on what we call a collaborative framework of helping, reaching out for mental health. Now, I think Dr. Chhim did a wonderful thing, and that is to indigenize Western concepts. The concept of PTSD, you know, a certain segment of our population understands that, but when we go out to the provinces, they have no idea what PTSD is. What Dr. SOTHEARA CHHIM did was indigenize the term. And I think he realized very quickly, people began to connect to this and began to appear and seek help. And so he was able to establish his psychosocial community-based intervention with the presence of some religious members, and make this a complete holistic way of treating, including the spiritual and the community. This is what I find most wonderful in the work of Dr. Chhim. He's not only working with community, but includes also the church, the temples, the monks, and the priests, and the imam, to complete the healing of the patients who come to him. And this is now a trend moving in the field of mental health and psychiatry. We're now working not only in the biopsychosocial framework, we're now working in the framework of biopsychosocial-spiritual. Our trainees are now getting this kind of training. We are helping them understand how to incorporate spirituality into the practice of medicine, and especially in the area of mental health. And this idea is gaining traction. A lot of people are now interested in this, and we're encouraging all training programs in the Philippines to include in their curriculum a spiritual aspect of mental health problems. So that's one of the biggest contributions that I see that Dr. Chhim had given us. We're all trying to go in that direction, and Dr. Chhim had shown us the way.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Banaag. And if I may, before we go and open up to the questions from our audience, for general audience, I did want to ask of Dr. Banaag, Dr. Chhim, and Dr. Batwani, given the problem about the supply and demand situation as described earlier, where there's a lot of demand for the kind of interventions that Dr. Chhim and yourselves have been providing so kindly, in fact, what is the scope for non-fully trained people through their work in civil society organizations to be able to also help out in this? Because of course, Dr. Banaag mentioned about people they are training. I don't know whether he was only referring to those getting formal training in medical schools. But I suppose it's possible to also train more informally groups of people, especially young people, I'm sure, who would be very enthusiastic in this. And then, do outright community outreach work where again, mental health interventions are needed. Again, the question that lurks in my mind is, how risky might this be if it's not done right? And in fact, is it going to be easy to try and get some informally trained groups of people to actually help out in the effort, given the lack of those with medical degrees who, in fact, ideally would be the ones leading the kind of intervention. So I don't know whether in your own work, Dr. Batwani, or in fact, Dr. Banaag, and of course, Dr. Chhim himself, whether in fact there's already a big role being played by less formally trained people who are able to help out.
May I?
Yes, please, Dr. Banaag.
You don't see me, but I can only I can only make you hear my voice. Yes, we're going to the grassroots. In Philippine Mental Health Association, we're now working with barangay health workers, which include, in fact, midwives, our traditional helots, and we're working with them. We're not training them to be semi-psychiatrists and psychologists. We're training them to be midwives who are sensitive to the mental health signals of the patients, the young people that they see, and be able to console, to provide some counseling, some words of comfort and wisdom based from their own life experiences. We don't ask them to make any diagnosis. We then ask them to refer to us if the problem is really significant. Not all kinds of mental health will need doctors and psychologists, Parents, in fact, we're doing work now with parents because we're moving more and more into primary prevention. If parents will only learn how to talk to their children more kindly, with more empathy, the children will thrive. We don't want, what children hate to hear from parents? The blaming. When they get in trouble and they talk to their parents, they're usually told, well, it's your fault. You've been so stubborn. You don't listen, And the children tell me, I don't tell my parents because I end up being the one at fault. And if only parents can learn to change their language of communicating with their children, I think we'll be able to prevent a lot of mental health problems. So in answer to your question, Dr. Chiel, moving down to the grassroots, we're helping them to be able to do what they are capable of doing. We don't expect them to give medicine or to do psychotherapy, but simply as mothers and fathers, as hilot, as midwives, within their own level of capacities, they will learn how to talk to the young people in more comforting ways. Make them feel that they are in a safe place. This is one of the favorite languages of the young people, safe space. They're always looking for a safe space. And if we can provide that in a wider circle in our community, I think that will be great help to a lot of our young people. So we're moving down to the grassroots.
Okay, now that's a wonderful insights, Dr. Banaag. In fact, I like the way you said it, that, in effect, the family, the parents especially, have a very critical role to play. Indeed, everything starts within the family, which is the basic unit of society. So very quickly, I guess I wanted to hear from Dr. Chhim and Dr. Batwani as well. I mean, how do you see, how have you seen more of civil society people, not necessarily formally trained, being of help in this challenge of mental health issues?
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, actually, if we have resource available, if we have all the supplies available, we don't need to train those people at the front line. But because low-income country, low resource like Cambodia, we do not have enough doctor, enough psychiatrists to reach out to community. So I think one way is that to shift tasks from us to the people in the front line in the community. So what we did was that we don't train them to become a therapist, but we have three objectives. First, to help them identify the problems, because mental health problem is not known to the people in community, because they thought that this is a possession by spirit, by somebody put black magic and so on and so on. And then what they did was that refer them to traditional healer, to monks. And then what monk did was that a very traditional way how to get rid of the spirit, and sometimes very dangerous to the patient. For example, they tie up the patient, they pour polluted waters, they beat the patient in order to get rid of the spirit. So I think this kind of practice is dangerous for the patient. So what we did was that we invited the people who have the role in treating the patient, or in people in their community, to come to our training so that they can identify the problems and manage in a simple way, in a kind of first aid things like empathic listening, assessing the risk, provide some kind of emotional support. And if they cannot do all this, then they can refer to more professional help. So I think in doing this, a lot of community people we work with who used to refer client to monk, to traditional healers, they understand and they start to refer to the health center or to the clinic. So I think this is one good thing. Another good thing is that all the healer that had wrong way of practicing mental health, getting rid of the spirit and so on, they understand this. So they try to minimize the harm, the risk to the patient, and try to talk on a kind of first aid we provide, or if not, then they refer. So now I receive a lot of referral from monks, because monks understand this mental health problem. So when people go to monk for improving their luck, their fortune, they say, well, I improve your fortune through my blessing, but you need to go to the doctor. So I often get referral from monks because of, I think, this kind of work. Yeah.
About Dr. Vatwani, any experience you might share on this?
See, we are dealing with the wandering mentally roadside destitutes, which we are treating and then taking them back to their families in the villages. We have observed is that the village administration is very proactive, very supportive, and very caring, and they understand the intricacies of the entire gestalt of the problem, and they come forward to help. For example, if you have a family who had a person who was mentally ill and was violent, the family refuses to accept that patient, the village seniors, the elders, come forward and say that, look, right now he has been brought back and he's in a much better condition. He's not violent anymore. So let's give the patient a chance. My personal take on this thing is that the more community people are involved, the better it is overall in terms of results. Yes, what you say is right, that there exists a chance that they may misuse either the power given to them or the knowledge given to them or whatever. But I personally feel that the pluses outweigh the minuses insofar as the quantum of illness is concerned. You have to take into consideration statistically that 40% of the population of any country at some point of time goes through anxiety and depression, which figures must have gone through the roof after COVID. Given that, it is very difficult for actual professionals, qualified professionals, to deal with that load, and community people who already have voices within that community can and do and should play a significant important. I mean, I'm definite that with a little bit of training, I mean, I was amazed with the amount of training with Dr. Chhim has done over there. If similar training were done in our country, I think it would make a lot of difference in terms of the overall quantum of mental health and the stress which is there overall. That's my take.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, it's been a very rich discussion indeed. And thank God that Dr. Banaag was able to also finally
Yes.
be able to say
Pearls of wisdom come in the end.
great words of wisdom coming from a wealth and depth of experience, I'm sure. And so really at this point, I guess we can transition towards accommodating and addressing questions coming from our general audience. Now, I understand that we have...
Dr. Shell, before
Yes.
we proceed to the question and answer, may we ask our panelists for a photo opportunity?
Absolutely. I hope even briefly Dr. Banaag can...
Okay. Joining us in this photo op is our awardee, Dr. Chhim, and our panelists. There, Dr. Banaag. Please turn on your camera and give us your best smiles.
There you go.
We are taking a screenshot in 3, 2, 1. And another one, please. 3, 2, 1. Thank you, everyone. Back to you, Dr. Shell.
Thank you. Thank you. So yes, indeed, at this juncture, I will have some help in moderating the questions from our general audience. And so we have here, I'd like to call on my co-moderator now, Chiclet Toledo, who will help in facilitating our Q&A portfolio. And again, just to reiterate what has been put in the chat box, you can put in your questions in the Q&A tab or comments in the chat box. But again, the questions specifically are better put in the Q&A box. And of course, those who are on Facebook and YouTube, I believe there might be a way for you to also type in comments as well that we will try to monitor. So at this point, let me hand over to you, Chiclet.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Shell. And wow, my goodness, so many things to discuss, so many things to learn. So we will jump right in and get the questions going from the audience. No? And they have already encoded and typed in their questions. We have listened to you, Dr. Chhim, and to our esteemed panelists. We feel the deep concern and the passion and the unwavering commitment of the chosen purpose. You have offered alternative perspectives of social solidarity and how humanity can really come together and heal, transform, and empower communities. So we are very happy that our audience have already typed in their questions. Let me first ask, just to connect with how to engage the young people. There is a question here on engaging the youth, and I think this comes from a youth audience. No, we want to volunteer, but how do we get over that mindset that the adults are always right? We want to be part of mental health advocacy, but somehow it hinders us young people from helping out more mature individuals. I guess if the ones they're helping are older than themselves. Is that an issue? Anybody from our panel can probably give some inputs to this audience, that participant who asked this question?
Can I say something, Chiclet?
Yes, Paul, yes.
In our own midst, there are a lot of young people who have been involved in mental health issues. In fact, we have this group called Youth for Mental Health, and it's a growing group. And they have been doing a lot of work on primary prevention, talking with young people themselves, and have been helpful to our professional groups. There are a few others that I heard are forming, but these are movements coming from the ground. These are not initiated by professionals. They themselves are coming forward and trying to help their peers who are in darkness. So I am very hopeful that this kind of movement will thrive, will continue and thrive. We are also trying to develop in the Philippine Mental Health Association more volunteerism, volunteers, this time from young people who are very eager to be part of the solution to the problem of mental health. So I think there is hope. There are some movements going on. The WHO predicted that there is a parallel mental health pandemic going on together with the COVID pandemic, and predicts even more that this mental health pandemic will outlive the COVID virus pandemic. And so this pandemic of mental health will stay with us for some time. And there is time for many young people to try and connect to different groups of helpers in mental health.
So there is you're saying, Dr. Banag, there are some groups now working, from the ground, and that they're doing more peer-to-peer, peer-to-peer engagement. Is that what's happening also in your context, Dr. Chhim, and also in India, Dr. Vatwani?
Yeah, well, I think I see a lot of good initiative by young people. They create a kind of network on mental health. I have not been in there, but that's what I saw in university students. They connected with each other and create this kind of platform that they can discuss, share their mental health issue, or they sometimes invite professionals to talk to their groups. So I think in this case, at first it's difficult to challenge the old people because it takes generation for our old people to understand. And maybe we don't need to change, but we need to learn to live with the way of our old people thinking. But I think from middle, how can I say, older generations, the middle generation like me, and younger, and that we need to understand, need to learn to listen to our children, because they also have a good opinion. In fact, they understand mental health problem better than their parents. So I think for us in our generation, we should try to understand more, to listen more to our young generation. And for the young generation themselves, maybe they don't need to challenge their parents, but try to do their own work, their own good things to support, peer support for the mental health problem of their peers. So I think by doing so, change will come, but may not be coming soon, but gradually it may come. So I see this happen too in Cambodia.
Thank you. Dr. Bharat?
Yeah, I think that in terms of helping out the seniors, I don't know whether specific groups exist or not in India, but in terms of helping out their own age group, yes, there are groups which are there. Though how far they are successful is a different story, because at some point of time, I have seen that the younger groups don't want to interfere too much into the opposite person's life. They want to give the person space.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at this point of time, it is very difficult. It is very important for the group to understand that if the person on the opposite side has lost his productivity, has lost his interest in social media, friends, etc., then you are dealing with a problem which cannot just be left out by saying that, okay, let him have his space. So the pickup of the illness or the pickup of onset of depression or the pickup of change of behavior is not as good as what it should be. The same thing applies while dealing with seniors. I mean, I find that the junior lot may have differences of opinion with the senior lot, which does not, in a sense, constitute mental illness. So there has to be a clear understanding of what exactly constitutes mental illness, what exactly is depression, whether there are crying spells, whether there is not taking a bath, not combing, not going out for dinner, not wanting to see good movies. All that is in essence missing in the groups in terms of knowledge level. This is my own person. But the goodwill is there. The intention is good. But that intention is not being taken to the next step of creating great results. So I think that needs to be worked upon in our country, if you ask me honestly. I think what Dr. Banaag said seems to be much more this thing, and it's great that he has made this initiative. Let's hope that in our country also such initiatives are followed. There are parent groups for children, and there are counselors in schools, and there are. But still, I wonder as to how much are they successful in terms of actually picking up the younger people who commit suicide, actually picking up the younger people who take very badly to drugs, or go errant and develop mental illness. I'm not very crystal clear on the statistics on this particular issue, so I wouldn't want to comment one way or the other, but this is the way it is.
Yeah, I think there are some questions related to how do we engage more young people, to be part of both as a peer counselor or be part of that community. And I think there's a participant who wants to ask a question live. Is this related to this? Maybe spend like a few more minutes on how to engage youth and become part of the solution. Jeline Garcia, are you asking a related question? And you're raising your hand. Are you there? No? Okay. Now, may I ask Madeline Avila, who is now part of our group here, and a representative of the next generation. Anything you want to ask or insight on how else can we engage the young people to be part of this very important work or mission?
So I do have a few insights, but I do want to ask my question that is still related to the youth, but more on our younger generations, especially our children. So in this talk, trauma is carried. Whether or not someone receives treatment, trauma can manifest in many different ways, whether on how we work, how we make friendships. But unfortunately, there are times where trauma can manifest in how we raise our children. And, children have very absorptive minds and hearts. And even if parents do not speak about their traumas, they can feel it. And they carry that with them. So I guess my question for the panel would be, how do we address this type of generational trauma, whether or not it roots from historical roots, or whether or not it comes from a very individual level?
Can I venture? That's a very tough question, Madeline. There are many parents who suffer from trauma. Our direction of move in mental health is more and more towards families, working with parents, trying to help parents understand the needs of their children. The mental health, for example, just this mental health elevation during this pandemic is because of very basic things. It is the need of teenager and little children to go out and discover friendships, exercise their newly acquired skills of establishing relationships, teenagers going out to meet friends, to be in school, to talk with teachers, to find their own strengths and weaknesses and how they solve problems. In effect, they're discovering themselves. They're establishing identity. Now, that is working with them from their end. The parents, there is a big disconnect, with parents. And so we are trying, we in the professional groups, the child psychiatrists, the psychologists, our organizations are moving more towards the direction of helping parents understand this generation. This generation is the first generation to struggle and live with an environment that is saturated with tools. And their brain is accordingly affected by that. Their brain is adapting to this environment. And so it's not easy to talk to them. The parents find it very difficult to talk to them because their parents grew up in a different generation. There is so much bigger generation gap now, and parents need a lot of help on how to narrow that gap. So one of our major directions now is organizing parent groups and giving lectures, seminars, workshops, on how to talk. Just the simple thing of how do you talk with your teenage sons and daughters, The old language is not working anymore. Blaming them is not going to help. That drives them to suicide. So it's helping them understand how they got into this situation by asking them questions, not telling them what to do. These are among the things that we teach many parents. So, Madeleine, your question is very difficult to answer. It's a big, major movement that we need to go. But the direction is more working with parents.
Okay, you want to chime in? Yes, Dr. Barat.
Yeah, I think Dr. Banag was speaking mainly on the parent and the family issue. I personally feel that there is a lot of disconnect between various castes and various economic levels within society, which have not been addressed and which at least need to be addressed. So somewhere down the line, at least perhaps in psychiatry, the specialization of community psychiatry would do a lot of good, which has not yet happened. I mean, there's a lot of work going on in parent-child, and there's a lot of work going on in children's psychiatry. But you have people from different castes who are ostracized, or you have a racial discrimination in the US or whatever, or in the Western countries. Unless there are specialized people who are dealing with this particular thing, I feel that there remains a vacuum within society, which is unaddressed, unattended, and in the process, those traumatic experiences continue to be in your psyche and continue to hamper your full-fledged productive thinking. I don't have solutions to this. I mean, I wish there were solutions, and nobody's really coming forward with the solutions at the academic level for the courses of psychiatry or even for the courses of counselors. But definitely it is there. Like you see, Dr. Chhim's attempt to incorporate the community. If he would not have done that, he would not have been successful in the whole thing. So this is while he is addressing a particular problem. Vice versa, there are multiple problems within the community which are different from different levels. I mean, someone asked me that why didn't you try and contact him via Google? Why didn't you try and contact him? They don't realize that in villages, Googles don't exist in India. So all those factors, the intense differences within communities, within the haves and the have-nots, within generations have to be addressed. And for this, I feel there needs to be a specialization in our education system, which needs to take it forward.
Mm-hmm.
That is one.
Yeah.
Second is, I see a lot of, in the chats, I see a lot of people just coming forward with solutions or possible solutions. Mm-hmm. The participants should realize that to implement a solution, even the smallest one, is a huge, huge, huge task, wherein a lot of perseverance, a lot of dedication, a lot of sincerity, a lot of effort, capacity to take negatives has to be within your personality to reach that part. Unless you have developed those personality traits to take it further. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Barat. Dr. Chhim, maybe just to add to that question, Professor Randy David, who has joined us via Zoom, has raised this question in relation to intergenerational transmission or transference. And to Dr. Chhim, if you have encountered the same Baxbat syndrome among the post-Khmer Rouge generation. And please explain further the intergenerational transmission or transference that has affected two generations apart.
Well, thank you for the questions. I want to go back to the history of this concept. So that concept was coined in the 1413s during the conflict war between the Thai and Khmer Empire at that time. So at that time, the Siamese kingdom occupied Cambodia for about 2 centuries. And a lot of, I guess, a lot of trauma, a lot of oppressions that happened. That's why the concept was used at that time, and that continue to use until now. And the Khmer Rouge time make Cambodian even more baksbat. And I think this kind of baksbat behaviors or attitudes, I can summarize in 3 things. People do not want to hear anything anymore, do not want to see, do not want to talk. So generation of the Khmer Rouge, the people never talk. Cambodian people never talk about their own traumatic experience under the Khmer Rouge in the family. So there was a lot of, how can I say, secret in this within the family. And then it's become mistrust. So people do not trust each other easily. So that's why it make them don't talk to the people. So I think if you look at the society now, people do not easily trusting people very much. And they become, submissive, cowards, so easily follow. So whatever they say, whatever other people say, they just follow. So I think this kind of attitudes, it's become like a kind of cultures, be kind of a way of life in Cambodian family. If there is no kind of education or change, this can transfer, again to our generations. We were trying to bridge between the 3 generations through creating a project called intergeneration dialogues, because we see there was a missing between information from parent, grandparent, parent, and children, and that make a lot of problem in the family. And children don't understand why their parents are so scared. Only simple problems. Why are they become overprotective? Why are they become like careful for them? So it's become to the point that their independency cannot, happen to them. They cannot live independent because of this. So we create an intergeneration dialogue for children to understand the problem of their parents and their grandparents. So from that, we see children in this project, they start to understand, they cry, and they ask, they ask their parents for forgiveness for their problems that happen in the family so far. So I think some kind of, we don't have a magic, way of treating this or overcoming this, but this kind of thing may contribute in stopping or treating the transmission of trauma through generation. And a lot of things I mentioned earlier, like democratic space, like other things, education,
social justice,
or justice,
right. And that's a related question from Zach Castillo of Philippine Mental Health Association. It seems that there is a lot of intersection between addressing social injustice and facilitating collective healing. Isn't that hard? What are the challenges in addressing social injustices and leading to collective healing in the Cambodian context, and then Dr. Bharat, Indian context, Dr. Corny in the Philippine context? They want to know that intersection of social justice or addressing social injustice leading to collective healing.
Yes. Well, maybe there may be different era, jurisdictions. I can talk about the Khmer Rouge time because we can see a collective trauma that everyone was affected, especially the older generation, my parent generation and my generations. So there are a lot of justice. So mental health interventions alone cannot be sufficient to heal. So that's why I think the Cambodian government and the UN are trying to set up the tribunal in order to find truth and to achieve justice for the survivor. Because we see that what we should know about what victim needs. So what they need is to understand what happened. Why do they kill my parents? That's why we made another project called Victim Perpetrator Dialogue, because from the start, like you understand, Cambodian people, victim, survivor, healer, therapy have the same experience, and in some place they live in the same community, they share the same water, same pagodas, but they never talk to each other. So we create a project that we try to heal the community. So we create a project for victim and survivor to talk, because they want to know the truth. What happened to my parent? Why did you do this to my parents? So at first it was difficult, but at first we use film to interview perpetrators, and then use the film to, well, first we interview the patient, the victim, and then use the film to show to perpetrators and want to see their reaction. So we film their reaction, come back to victim. So we exchange around 6-7 times before, you know, all the angers, all the problem, emotions come down. We ask if they want to meet each other. That's why in my presentation, there was a chant that victim and perpetrator start to meet the first time and start to talk. So from that, we have a session where they understand each other, they accept what the victim perpetrator talk and ask for forgiveness. And we did this in front of the Buddha, the statues of Buddha and Buddhist monk. So people cannot lie in front of the statue of the Buddha. And we have other family that, no, I still don't agree with what the perpetrator, the perpetrator said, but I'm okay because I already asked. In other case, there is no compromise. So we try all this to help, you know, heal the community, to get the truth, to get justice. So part of the international tribunal that help as well for victim to have certain level of justice and certain level of truth, that we cannot have like full justice or full truth. So I think in this way, we see there are a plus in mental health support to our patient, and follow up from that kind of truth tellings effort. We follow by individual counselings. If they need psychiatric problem, we treat them. And we try to do livelihood enhancement project, because a lot of these people are poor because of years of traumatized. So we try to help several things, you know, from a holistic way.
Yeah, very holistic.
Yeah,
very comprehensive, Dr. Chhim. Very brief inputs from you, Dr. Bharat and Dr. Corny, on social justice and collective healing, the importance of truth, the importance of reconciliation to address collective healing. Go ahead, please.
I think when we talk of social justice, we are talking of issues which are there in society for a very long period of time. So anybody who is involved, I mean, I am primarily trying to focus on the participants and trying to help them and guide them, is that anybody who is involved has to take into consideration that these are long-standing issues, and it's going to take a slow process. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of energy, a lot of perseverance. Having said that, I think that one of the ways forward would be to get inspired from people who have done something for such causes, reading their autobiographies, let's say the Ramon Magsaysay Awardees who were there in so many years, reading up their citations, following up on their life, and reading up the Nobel laureates, reading up so many prestigious prizes are there which are given to people who are doing hardcore work. If you do all that, then you get inspired and you feel that, look, yeah, this needs to be done. I remember I go for talks very often. So I had earlier attended one talk of Emily Abrera with Stephen Muncy. So I'm using this exact slide of what Emily Abrera asked Stephen Muncy and what are the reply of Stephen Muncy. So these are the ways that you can take it forward. And unless you do this, social justice cannot be addressed in a simple A square plus B square format. It cannot be.
Yeah.
This is a very, very, very slow process. But once addressed, I personally feel that the emotional satisfaction which you'll get will be much, 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 much more than the richest person available around you. There may be thousands of people who are richer than Dr. Chhim, but the emotional satisfaction that he has, only he has. And hundreds, thousands of people richer than Dr. Banag in Philippines, but the emotional satisfaction is visible on his face, and it is something to cherish, and it's something that you would want in your lifetime. If those are the aspirations that you take forward, that's moving forward.
That's wonderful, Dr. Bharat. Yes, Dr. Corney, we're about to wrap up. Okay,
That's very wonderful, Dr. Bharat. Our problem in the Philippines, in our local setting, is a little bit more complicated. We don't have an enemy like Khmer Rouge. We cannot define clearly the enemies. The enemy perhaps is the system,
Yes.
perpetrated by people who are led wrongly. And so it's a very complicated problem. But I like what you said, Dr. Bharat. Maybe what we need to do is bring back the heroes who live among us, the heroes who have lost their lives fighting, and bring back the idealism of young people. Because the young people are losing that. We're not even talking about that in schools anymore, at least here in this country. I feel we have lost our way, Education is now become merely feeding in all information. I don't think we talk about social justice in our schools. I hope we still do, But it's so complicated that I agree. Maybe we need to put forward again the heroes that the young people can identify with, and maybe in their own way, slowly create a new system where there is more social justice. So it's complicated here because we have no identified common enemy like the Khmer Rouge.
That's very correct, Dr. Corney. And we're looking for heroes. We are in the midst of heroes, the three of you. We look up to you. You help heal individuals and communities. And just for the last question, there are two related questions from Lan Lerum of Refuge of Joy in Cambodia, and from Mr. Batalia of Ateneo Bulatao Center. How do you heal? How do the healers heal themselves? You listen to a lot of problems, a lot of trauma, and you absorb them. But you all look so good. Your energy is so up, basing from this discussion. Dr. Corney especially, but from the three of you, how do you do self-care? How do you continue to heal as you help others? Go ahead.
That's one of my favorites. I'm often asked, well, many of you don't know it, but I'm 87 years old. I have seen a lot. I've gone through a lot of, difficult periods in life, but I'm still going strong. And people ask me, what is your secret? It's not a secret. Learning how to take care of ourselves is not a secret. All we need to do is, one, make sure that we preserve that mindset, that hope is there, never to give up on hope. We also need to take care of our spiritual lives, very importantly. But on a more mundane level, we need to take care of our bodies. We need to eat the right food. We need to sleep the right number of hours that our body and brain needs. And above all, to me, exercise. I do my daily work. I do my daily walk without failure. And if it's raining, I do my jumping jack in my room. You know?
Okay. Very practical tips to keep yourself healthy. Yes, Dr. Barat.
I think I have always lived up to trying to read a lot more on inspirational figures. That has been my savior all through my life. I've read a lot of Tagore. I've read a lot of the citations of people who have got this Ramon Magsaysay Award. I've read a lot of work, citations of people who got the Nobel Prize. When you see someone at that level and you realize the amount of continuity and the amount of perseverance that you get, you try and imbibe a little of that within yourself and you say, let's go on. And yes, the emotional satisfaction is unbelievable at some point of time. It may not happen in the first 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, 15 years, but it does happen ultimately. And that emotional satisfaction also gives you a kind of spiritual feeling that, yes, I mean, if you were to die today and meet up to God tomorrow and God asks you, Bharat, what did you do when you were down? And at least you can raise your eyes, look at him eye to eye and say, look, I tried something. I mean, it was not much in the entire context of all the wandering mentally ill on the face of India or on this earth, but it was something I tried, honestly.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Chhim.
Yeah, well, for me, it's simple. Helping other survivor, help myself here too. Because when I see their smile, they say, doctor, I'm feeling much better now. I can continue my work. I can communicate. I am back now. I think this helped me. So it made me feel smile inside and a lot of, how can I say, more courage for me to go on, to continue. When I start psychiatry from the first time, I feel that this may not be good for me because of the problem, the stigma, and a lot of things. But when I meet people, when I treat people, for example, who was in the cage for 20 years, and now they can come out. And it's very amazing. And I feel so happy, and that is a healing for me. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can I say one more point?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
To all the participants. I'll just tell you that when you're doing all this work, at the end of the day, you're not looking at whether it will get rewarded by society or not, or whether it will you're doing it because of your own passion. I'll give you a real life example. There's a lady called Savitribai Phule. She was from the backward caste community. In 1848, she, along with one Fatima Sheikh, started the first school for women in India, the first school for women in India. From 1848 to 1852, she and Fatima Sheikh set up 18 schools exclusively for females in India. She was the first headmistress and a principal of the school. 167 years later, Pune University in India was renamed as the Savitribai Phule Pune University. So 167 years later, her work was acknowledged, and finally an entire university was renamed as the Savitribai Phule University. She did not know that this would happen. Perhaps she never looked upon that as the goal. She looked upon the fact that there were females who were uneducated. She felt that females deserved education, and she moved the plow. She and Fatima Sheikh did that. So today, if you have people in India who have been prime ministers, presidents, whatever, it is because of the contribution of that one single lady who initiated the movement of education. So the goal may be very far. What you're doing may be very little. What you may do may not, the goals that you aim for may not happen within your lifetime. Like I would like to see India free of the wandering mentally ill, but it would not happen in my lifetime. Perhaps it will happen 10 years from now, perhaps it will happen 100 years from now. But with that hope and with that optimism, one has to continue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. But yes, please, Dr.
Very
Cordy.
quickly.
Yes.
Believe it or not, we don't work to be awarded. We don't work to gain some honors. We work because this is our passion.
Yes.
This is the joy we get when our patients who used to be so depressed begins to smile again. And that is the joy that sustains us more than anything else in this kind of work that we are doing. I'm sure Dr. Chhim will agree with me that the award is a bonus. This is not the goal of his work, I'm sure. This is a bonus in our lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we have so much bonus just listening to the three of you. Thank you so much for this time. I think our participants will echo that we have this wonderful opportunity, 2 hours of your time to share your passion and your dedication and your commitment to us. So now I'd like to call in Miss Susan. Do you want to do some? Oh, Dr. Shell now. Dr. Shell?
Well, yeah, let me make a feeble attempt.
Yeah.
Let me make a feeble attempt to try and synthesize the very, very rich interaction that we've had this afternoon. Maybe I'll summarize it in 3 points. Well, at the outset, let me first say that the Cambodian experience, because of, again, the Khmer Rouge, the genocide that happened, the Cambodian experience has really been in a class of its own, as far as the way it provoked a lot of mental health issues. But, you know, again, we all know that mental health is everywhere. Mental health is an issue everywhere. And one might be able to say, after this discussion, that indeed mental health, if you like to put it this way, mental health has come of age in the sense that, you know, now the consciousness of everybody about the importance of this is much more wide and much more acute. And thanks in part to COVID-19, as has been indicated by Dr. Banaag at the outset. But again, even before COVID-19, I think we all know that, among other things, teenage suicides had already been at alarming rates. Social media is often blamed for this. People sometimes just not getting enough likes is enough to throw them in depression. And of course, cyberbullying itself has become a very common experience. But again, COVID made the mental health issue, in a sense, broader in terms of the age groups that it is actually spanning. Because, you know, everybody suffered some kind of a mental trauma from all the isolation, the lockdowns, and all of the inaccessibility of social interactions that has actually resulted from the COVID-19. So in the face of all of that, mental health becoming a widespread issue, the problem, as also pointed out by Dr. Banaag, is that there is this supply and demand challenge that has gotten more acute. Psychiatry still is not as attractive a specialization for medical students, apparently. Development agencies don't prioritize mental health as worthy of the support that, again, it actually requires. Even government officials don't tend to put that high in their budget priorities. And again, schools themselves, perhaps, don't really highlight as much, you know, the studies in mental health, including medical schools themselves. And of course, the demand from students also is not that strong. So really, that shows that given the lack of supply, there is a need for more workers, perhaps outside of the medical profession, outside of those who are professionally trained to deal with this issue. And that's where this discussion came about how civil society groups, villages themselves, and most importantly, the family itself is really being the starting point for interventions to improve mental health. And of course, we've heard a lot about how parents have a very important role to play just by changing the way that they speak to their children. So again, all of this is important and underscores the need for training on parenting, training on counseling. And these are the kind of things that those professionally trained can help do so that the supply of the intervenors and those who can approach and improve the mental health issues will increase. Now, lastly, I would like to underscore the fact that Dr. Chhim's work is particularly admirable and worthy of recognition for several reasons. Number one, the sheer scale of the problem in Cambodia, because this was a nationwide experience, a traumatic experience it went through. It indeed was very, very challenging. And for him to be almost a lonely voice taking that on was practically nothing short of heroic. Second, he actually made that local adaptation of the usual Western concept of post-traumatic stress disorder. Everybody knows it, that's PTSD. But again, Paxpat was something quite different. And again, he was able to successfully adapt the kind of knowledge applied in this area to be suitable to the local needs of the Cambodian population. The third element I found admirable was that, he has recognized and has indeed asserted that this is a holistic approach that is needed. You don't only work with the medical profession and even those who are working in this area of counseling and all that, but you have to look at the legal system, you have to look at the social welfare delivery systems, and you have to look at the spiritual leaders as well as having a role in, again, addressing the problem and making the improvements necessary. But most of all, I think what is admirable about what Dr. Chhim did was the fact that the motivation was there to even do it. He having been a victim himself of all of this, and yet deciding rather than, again, getting away and making up for his unfortunate experiences, he could have easily taken refuge abroad and just have a more relaxed life. But no, he decided to actually help in addressing the same experience that he experienced himself among millions of other Cambodians. And so this is really what makes him truly deserving of the Ramon Magsaysay Award. We saw in him the selflessness, and we saw in him the greatness of spirit that we in the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation are always looking out for. We congratulate you, Dr. Chhim, for a job very, very well done, and for all the work you have done for humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shell, for synthesizing and summarizing our many takeaways this afternoon. And thank you for leading our panel. That was really an exceptional synthesis. Dr. Vatwani and Dr. Banaag, thank you for sharing your expertise and experiences in advocating for mental health. It has definitely encouraged all of us listening and watching all of you to have more compassion for other people, to understand our differences, and to help break this stigma against mental health issues. I want you to know also, Dr. Chhim, that to Dr. Banaag's point, this may be a bonus for you, this Magsaysay Award, but it is also a charge. It is a charge for you to continue the great work that you're doing. Because I can still remember the first time I spoke to you and I told you that you were a Magsaysay winner. You were so surprised. You were so, what are you talking about? Who are you? What award are you talking about? Because you were so passionate about the work that you do. But hopefully, it is not about the award, but it's the charge that we're giving you. It's that pat in the back. It's that big rara to tell you, great job, and may your tribe increase, not just in Cambodia, but throughout Asia. Another thing too that I wanted to say to everyone is I know that this is a big topic. And so this is not the one-time, big-time conversation that we're having. We too at the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation, we're putting money where our mouth is. And so we're telling everybody that we're actually going to invest more dialogues, more conversations on mental health as we enter our 65th year anniversary in 2023. And so our pledge to our next generation of young leaders is that with the tutelage of our Magsaysay laureates, we are going to pursue and continue this conversation for the next 2 years. Okay, so please like our Facebook page. Please, get involved with our website because you will know more about the forums, the workshops, and the dialogues that we're going to have on this topic. Last but not least, Dr. Vatwani and Dr. Banaag, when we talk about heroes, we're actually coming up too with a 2023 65th anniversary commemorative book on all our laureates through our 65 years, remembering our heroes, remembering the lives that they've led, and why our new generation of young leaders should probably not even reinvent the wheel, but to draw inspiration from these time-tested heroes, these Asian heroes that we should really look up to for generations to come. So with that, I want to thank Dr. Chhim and the rest of the TPO team for joining us. Thank you so much for inspiring all of us with your journey. And we cannot wait to see you in Manila in a few weeks. And I know there's 40 of you, if I'm not mistaken, right, Dr. Chhim?
Yes.
40 of you that will be coming to Manila. We're going to have a big Cambodian delegation. I'm already giving you all a warm, big hug.
Yes.
But hopefully when we see you in a few weeks here in Manila, you will experience, the Philippine hospitality that we cannot wait to share with all of you. So thank you. And I guess I also have other thank yous to do here. I also want to thank the members of the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation Board of Trustees, starting with Shell Habito. As you can see, we cannot do our work without our wonderful, supportive trustees, our Magsaysay laureates who are always here to support us. If you have not mistaken, Stephen Mansi is here as well too. Bernadette Madrid is here too. And I bet there's quite a few others that I probably just don't know, but are quietly watching us and supporting us. And of course, I'd like to thank my team, who always work so quietly, feverishly behind the scenes to make all these lectures happen. Thank you. You know, I know who you are, Marie and everyone else. Salamat, thank you. And to all the other people watching us on Zoom, on Facebook, on YouTube, thank you. Please, everyone, just stay a few more minutes. We will be playing a short video prepared for us by TPO Cambodia. So please watch and enjoy and get inspired. See you all in Manila soon for the November 30th, 64th Ramon Magsaysay Awarding presentation ceremonies. Thank you all from Manila. Maraming salamat.
Maraming salam. Yeah.
Okay, watch this video.
ជំរាបសួរនាងខ្ញុំឈ្មោះតាំងសុភាពជានាយកកម្មវិធីរបស់អង្គការ TPO សប្តាហ៍ថ្ងៃខ្ញុំបានបម្រើការងារឲ្យអង្គការ TPO អស់រយៈពេល15ឆ្នាំសម្រាប់តួនាទីដែលនាងខ្ញុំបានបំពេញនៅអង្គការ TPO យើងមានការងារជាច្រើនដើម្បីធ្វើការរួមគ្នាក្នុងការចូលរួមឲ្យសម្រេចបាននៅចក្ខុវិស័យរបស់អង្គការ TPO គឺធ្វើយ៉ាងណាឲ្យប្រជាពលរដ្ឋកម្ពុជារស់នៅប្រកបដោយសុខភាពផ្លូវចិត្តល្អនិងមានការពេញចិត្តនៅក្នុងជីវិតរស់នៅប្រចាំថ្ងៃរបស់ខ្លួនតកតងជាមួយនឹងប្រវត្តិនៃអង្គការ TPO គឺអង្គការ TPO យើងគឺជាអង្គការមួយដែលផ្ដល់នៅសេវាគាំទ្រផ្លូវចិត្តហើយប្រវត្តិកើតចេញពី TPO ដែលមានទីស្នាក់ការនៅប្រទេសហូឡង់គឺនៅទីក្រុងអាំស្ទែដាមយើងបានចាប់ផ្ដើមអនុវត្តកម្មវិធីសុខភាពផ្លូវចិត្តនៅក្នុងឆ្នាំ1995និងនៅក្នុងឆ្នាំ2000អង្គការ TPO បានស្នើសុំចុះបញ្ជីជាអង្គការក្នុងស្រុកដើម្បីអនុវត្តការងាររបស់ខ្លួននៅក្នុងខេត្តគោលដៅមួយចំនួននៅក្នុងប្រទេសកម្ពុជាជាពិសេសខេត្តដែលមានទីតាំងជាប់នឹងព្រំប្រទល់ប្រទេសថៃនៅថ្ងៃទី21ខែកុម្ភៈឆ្នាំ2015អគារថ្មីរបស់អង្គការ TPO ត្រូវបានសម្ពោធជាផ្លូវការក្រោមព្រះរាជាធិបតីដ៏ខ្ពង់ខ្ពស់បំផុតរបស់ព្រះករុណាព្រះបាទសម្ដេចព្រះបរមនាថនរោត្តមសីហមុនីព្រះមហាក្សត្រនៃព្រះរាជាណាចក្រកម្ពុជានៅក្នុងឱកាសខួបទី20ឆ្នាំរបស់អង្គការ TPO សម្រាប់កម្មវិធីសំខាន់របស់អង្គការ TPO ដែលកំពុងតែអនុវត្តនាពេលបច្ចុប្បន្នមានកម្មវិធីចំនួន4កម្មវិធីទី1គឺជាកម្មវិធីសុខភាពផ្លូវចិត្តសហគមន៍ដែលយើងផ្ដល់ការគាំទ្រទៅដល់ប្រជាពលរដ្ឋដែលរស់នៅតាមសហគមន៍ឬក៏បណ្ដុះបណ្ដាលទៅដល់ធនធានក្នុងសហគមន៍កម្មវិធីដែលយើងកំពុងតែអនុវត្តកន្លងមកដែរគឺកម្មវិធីគាំទ្រនិងព្យាបាលទៅដល់ជនរងគ្រោះដែលរងផលប៉ះពាល់នៅក្នុងសម័យខ្មែរក្រហមជាពិសេសអ្នកដែលរងនឹងការប៉ះទង្គិចផ្លូវចិត្តកម្មវិធីទី3គឺជាកម្មវិធីបណ្ដុះបណ្ដាលឬកសាងសមត្ថភាពសម្រាប់ប្រជាពលរដ្ឋទូទៅដែលលោកមានចំណាប់អារម្មណ៍ឬក៏ទៅដល់អង្គការសង្គមស៊ីវិលដែលមានតម្រូវការជាពិសេសសម្រាប់ឆ្លើយតបទៅនឹងតម្រូវការរបស់ស្ថាប័នខ្លួនអ្វីដែលកាន់តែពិសេសសម្រាប់អង្គការ TPO ហើយនឹងជាកម្មវិធីស្នូលសំខាន់របស់អង្គការ TPO គឺអង្គការ TPO យើងមាន clinic សម្រាប់ព្យាបាលនិងគាំទ្រ ផ្លូវចិត្តសម្រាប់ប្រជាពលរដ្ឋទូទៅឬពេលខ្លះក៏មានជនបរទេសមកទទួលសេវាពីអង្គការ TPO ដែលឆ្លើយតបទៅនឹងតម្រូវការរបស់ប្រជាពលរដ្ឋក៏ដូចជាអ្នកជំងឺដែលមកទទួលសេវានៅទីនេះបច្ចុប្បន្នអង្គការ TPO មានបុគ្គលិកសរុបចំនួន41នាក់ក្នុងនោះមានបុគ្គលិកជាស្ត្រីចំនួន22នាក់ស្មើនឹង 51% និងបុគ្គលិកជាបុរសចំនួន19នាក់អង្គការ TPO បានកំពុងអនុវត្តគម្រោងឬក៏កម្មវិធីរបស់ខ្លួននៅក្នុងខេត្តគោលដៅដូចជាខេត្តបាត់ដំបងសៀមរាបកំពង់ឆ្នាំងកំពង់ចាមត្បូងឃ្មុំតាកែវនិងខេត្តកំពតប្រសិនបើអស់លោកស្រីមានចំណាប់អារម្មណ៍នៅក្នុងការស្វែងរកនៅព័ត៌មានលម្អិតអំពីកម្មវិធីរបស់អង្គការ TPO លោកស្រីអាចទំនាក់ទំនងតាមរយៈគេហទំព័រខាងលើឬក៏តាមរយៈអាស័យដ្ឋានដូចដែលមានដាក់នៅខាងក្រោមនាងខ្ញុំក៏ដូចជាតំណាងឲ្យបុគ្គលិករបស់អង្គការ TPO ទាំងមូលសូមថ្លែងអំណរអគុណដល់រាជរដ្ឋាភិបាលកម្ពុជាក៏ដូចជាម្ចាស់ជំនួយម្ចាស់មូលនិធិទាំងក្នុងនិងក្រៅស្រុកដែលតែងតែគ្រប់គ្រងជាបច្ចេកទេសនិងថវិកាក្នុងការផ្ដល់ជូននៅអង្គការ TPO ក្នុងការបំពេញតួនាទីរបស់ខ្លួនរហូតមកដល់បច្ចុប្បន្ននេះ
Thank you.
Thank you. See you. Again, congratulations, Dr. Chim.
Yeah, thank you so much. See you soon in the
See you
Philippines.
soon, indeed. Look forward to it. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye, Dr. Banaag, Dr. Watani.
Hi, Sothera. See you
to our audience, you are all invited to watch the live stream of the 64th Ramon Magsaysay Awards presentation ceremonies on November 30 at 4:30 p.m. Manila time. We would like to thank our official media partners of the 64th Ramon Magsaysay Awards Festival season, NHK World Japan, Agence France Press, and ABS-CBN News. To be updated with all our activities, we invite everyone to follow the Ramon Magsaysay Award on social media. You will find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.